Hello friends, hello professionals, and welcome to my channel, The Sea of Regulation. If this is the first time that you're stopping by, welcome. My channel is dedicated to helping clarify compliance issues, and in some of my videos, I make them for specific people, and this is one of them. This one is for compliance officers, and this video is going to touch on 3 signs that you might be out in the deep blue sea with no chance of being rescued and you're about to drown. But before I dive into the content, let me get my usual disclaimers out of the way. I am a financial services regulator. I am not a lawyer, and I'm not a professional advisor. And the views on this channel are all my own and do not represent the views of any regulatory authority or international standards setter. Now, with that out of the way, let's dive in. So, compliance officers, come here, come closer. Now, there's a lot of conversations happening about red flags. Let me give you some red flags that you should be looking out for if you are a compliance officer and you might be wrecked very soon. The first red flag that I've seen in my career for compliance officers, and this might apply to a few other people as well, but the first red flag that you might be in deep water, you're working 60 or more hours a week every week. Now, I'm not talking about that scenario where you're working towards something in particular and you need to put in a few extra hours for a few weeks. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I mean that you're working 60 hours a week, you're working flat out 12, 14-hour days, 5, 6, or 7 days a week, and you just can't seem to get a break. That is a big red flag that you might be in deep water. And it's not just working very hard, and there's a lot being said about the hustle culture. But in that particular scenario, it's not necessarily the hustle culture. You see, burning your candle on both ends in the middle only leaves you a puddle of wax. And after a certain amount of hours, you get to a point of diminishing returns. You start to miss things, big things. And who does that reflect on? It reflects on you, because you're the compliance officer and you have a lot of responsibilities. And no one is going to say, well, maybe you missed those things because you were overworked or overstretched. So it's important to recognize the first red flag in the role of compliance officers, because I've never heard of a compliance officer saying that they don't have enough work to do. I've not encountered that scenario. And if you have encountered that scenario for a compliance officer, drop it in the comments below. I'd be interested in knowing about that and that it does exist, if it does exist. The second red flag that I've seen impacting compliance officers, you are denied resources to get your job done. Now, resources don't just mean money. Resources can mean time, additional staff, whatever it is you need to get your job done. I have seen far too often compliance officers having the first red flag and nothing is being done in terms of alleviating that. Sometimes that overwork is as a result of a growing firm, and it may be a temporary situation if you have a good corporate governance culture that respects compliance and respects people's health. But just let's go back to resources. You see, one of the things I've seen is that firms sometimes will put things in writing and send to the regulator. So that could be snail mail or an email, but they will put the right things on paper as it relates to what the compliance officer will be doing, and then start to give them more work and not enough resources, or the scope of activities goes way beyond what is expected for the role for that one individual to carry out. If it is that you need resources, you definitely need to say so. And if you've said that over and over again, you've documented your concerns, remember, as a compliance officer, it's important to document. And you've still not gotten any reprieve, you're definitely out to sea and nobody's coming to save you. The third red flag that I've seen compliance officers experience is that you are denied time to even get your own training on. Now, I've had past videos where I talk about international standard setters and why standards need to be changed and why standards evolved. Because over time, crimes and different issues evolve, And of course, if issues evolve and the way we do business evolve, so too must the standards. And so too must the compliance measures that you implement. Now, if you are a really savvy compliance officer, you will already know that you need to have continual training. But some firms say to their compliance officers, listen, I didn't hire you to be in school full time. I hired you to do a job. But for you to do that job effectively, you have to keep on the bleeding edge of the issues that impact money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing, just general financial crime, risks, bribery, corruption. There's so many things that compliance officers have to be minded about. And you have to stay on top of these things. It's a lot of reading. And if you're denied that ability to get training and they don't support your training, both in time and financial resources. Now, some firms may not pay for everything because guess what? You can walk out the door with your knowledge. But some sort of support should be given for you to actually have your continuing professional development. And if that's not happening, it's definitely a red flag. Now, I know I said 3 things, but if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you will know that whenever there's a number in the description, I always give extra. Why? It's always good to give more than is expected. Now, the 4th red flag is that you've been hired as the compliance officer, but you have a slash career. And when I mean slash career, you're compliance officer slash HR, compliance officer slash head of administration, compliance officer slash MLRO for a big firm. For smaller firms, that's not necessarily a problem. But remember that flag I was talking about, that big red flag in terms of being overstretched or working flat out for all those hours? Well, that's 2 red flags. If it is that you have come on as a compliance officer, but you're doing additional things, you risk that burnout that I was talking about and run the risk of not being able to do your job properly. Again, if that compliance officer exists that don't have enough work to do, let me know, drop it in the comments. It may be a bit controversial because compliance is one of these careers that's relatively recent in relation to financial services. A lot of jobs have existed for decades, if not centuries. Managers and CEOs, those terms are very well known, but compliance officers still don't necessarily get the respect that they deserve. And a lot of firms like to see the compliance officer as a bit of a overachiever. And sometimes people see compliance officers as superheroes. And guess what? You kind of are. But every superhero has their kryptonite, their version of something, that supervillain that gets at them and basically takes them down in a fight. And you don't want that. So I know that this particular slash career red flag might be a bit controversial, and if you have any views, I'd be happy to hear them. Drop them in the comments below and let me know what you're thinking. But guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here and definitely do a few things to make sure you document your pleasure on this video. Give me a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and definitely hit the notification bell, because guess what? You owe it to yourself to keep up to date with what is happening with compliance, and I'll definitely do my part to help you with that. So until my next video, I'll catch you on the next one.